The problem with Florging on today's Wednesday morning drive. Hey everyone, Matt Cribbs here, and welcome back to another Wednesday morning drive. How are you doing? I'm great, as usual. It's a good Wednesday. Sun is out, it's not rainy, and it's not as hot as it has been, so that's a good thing. Been thinking lately about some things that have been going on that I observed while I was in DC and kind of been going on the world, and that thing is Pokemon Go. And not talking about Pokemon Go, the game. I've played it a little bit. McCribb's version 2.0 has played it extensively. He's a 12-year-old boy. He's kind of right smack dab in the target audience, so no surprise there. And you know, it's a game. I can't say it's a great game. It's a game that had a certain amount of problems with it, but had a tremendous IP that pretty much, you know, shot it to popularity. And not really going to go into the reasons why it became so popular so fast, except to talk about the fact that it did and what has happened as a result of that. So, you know, this type of fad, it's nothing new. A fad, a trend, even around, like, you know, toys, and especially flash in the pan fads, which Pokemon Go has proved to be. It was huge, it was a thing, everyone was on it, the numbers were through the roof, and now, you know, the numbers have declining. It doesn't have the staying power. And, you know, it is not the first time this has happened, and not the first time this has happened with a, you know, toy or entertainment product. Is Pokemon Go the pet rock of the 2010s? You know, I think that argument can be made. So people like trends. People like to belong. People like to follow. And this behavior, people like to know what's popular and be in the loop and do things. And this need, this want of human beings leads to this type of, you know, trendy following behavior. Foursquare made a whole application taking advantage of this fact with the check-ins and their swarms and that functionality where it's like, hey, you can be part of this thing, this movement that is happening. And it's a part of who we are. It's a part of our culture. It's herd behavior or lemming-like behavior. And I use the term herd for a reason. Because it's coupled with the other thing that made Pokemon Go unique to what it is. Interesting. There is a bunch of police cars in front of me. Okay, the road is not blocked off. It's just a little slow. Because there was an accident. There is a red car in front of me. You're not going to be able to see it with its door caved in. But looks like everyone's okay, because the guy's out of the car and talking. So there you can see the police behind me as I pass it. There's the accident. Hello, officer. So yes, Pokemon Go is a trend. It was herd type behavior that was exhibited, flocking, whatever you want to call it. So the other thing that made Pokemon Go kind of unique in what it is the fact that it hits another thing that people like to do. And that is overconsumption, or, you know, really, really getting a lot out of a property, I guess. If you like something, if some is good, more must be better. Or, as it's been termed, binging. And everyone knows what binging is, I think. If you don't know what binging is, people do it all the time. Binging is when you take something and you just consume until you're done. Either you run out of material, or you're just physically bloated and done with being able to consume anymore. Obviously, it ties in with food and, you know, the whole binging and when you eat and eating too much. But it's specifically referred to in media consumption. You know, it happens all the time with episodes on series on Netflix. People talk about binge watching. You know, it's a thing people do. You just sit down and say, I'm going to watch all 6 seasons of Game of Thrones and binge watch them, and you watch them back to back to back to back. And, you know, it's kind of fun to do that. It really gets you invested in the characters. It really gets you set in the you know, your mind goes to a very specific place that this massive amount of media or time spent in this world of fiction can really do things to you. If you don't believe me, I binge watched Breaking Bad because I hadn't seen it and it was near the end, and I binge watched and caught up to the last season, and let me tell you, not the best idea I've ever had. That is a very dark show that highlights some of the more disgusting parts of human nature, and if you binge watch a show like that, I was depressed afterwards. I was mentally in this place where I'm like, people are horrible. The world is horrible. It's so bad. So you have to be careful what you binge watch. I mean, doing this can really, it can mess with your thought patterns. It can really change where your mindset is. So, but we do it. People do it, and we love it. And when you combine those two things, this herd behavior where people love to follow the trends with a medium that encourages this binging. I mean, Pokemon Go is nothing but a platform for bingey consumption. It doesn't end. You just go and go and go and go. There's no gate really on what you can consume. So it leads to this thing called herd binging. It's not called that. Those are two words. Herding behavior and binging behavior are two common terms for what that is, and so you have this herd binging. But herd binging is hard to say. So, you know, what alternatively, like I said, herds, flocking, all this behavior, or binge watching, you know, overconsumption, gorging, if you will, flock gorging. Let's agree to call this florging from now on. So this florging behavior for flock gorging or herd binging, this florging type behavior where a massive number of people engage in massive consumption of a property all at the same time in a relatively short period of time is a fairly new phenomenon. You know, it can happen because binging itself is possible, because there are no gates on content anymore. I mean, there's gates on new content because it takes time to produce it. So when a new season of Game of Thrones is out, you can only watch 1 episode a week, and there's only however many episodes there are. So you can only watch an hour a week for 9 weeks. That's it. There is no more. And prior to the internet, prior to digital delivery, that was it. You could only watch it when it was on. Maybe you could tape it, but then, you know, it's hard to physically tape things and switch tapes, and there's friction against this binging process. Or sometimes we would encourage this behavior with marathons. Remember when TV channels used to do marathons of programming? They were a big deal. It was something that was advertised. It's like, you're in the middle of the Bewitched marathon, or whatever it was. Like, that was... People knew, people liked it because they would run these marathons, but it was an exception. It wasn't a normal pattern of consumption. Now with Netflix and Hulu and YouTube and even books like Amazon, with everything being available instantly, if you want a media title that exists, you can get it instantly. That has enabled this binge consumption type pattern to really become a thing. So, you know, that's why this is a fairly new thing that has happened. And, you know, the prevalence of Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter and social media has really, you know, I don't know if I would say it's invented this herding type behavior or these trends. It certainly didn't. Trends existed way before the internet, and word of mouth is extremely effective at spreading popularity, but it's certainly accelerated it. And I think it's the rise of social media and the speed that ideas can communicate and the speed at which things can become popular and then, on the flip side, become unpopular has super accelerated in this internet era. And I think flocking or herd behavior is really I don't know if I would apply it to the trends that happened in the pre-internet era. I mean, it's a slow build, it's a slow build, it's a slow build, and it peaks. And by the time it peaks, the initial, the early adopters are already falling off. And so you don't end up with the same pattern with that the internet enables, that something becomes popular and it's all of a sudden has mass appeal and is out in the entire world before the initial people who discovered it are even over it. Like, so the numbers just get hugely inflated. So Florging, I love the word. Florging is this new type of thing that has happened, and I think it's really been enabled by the internet. And it came up because, I should share, why it came up is when I was in DC, we were at the FDR Memorial, which is a great memorial, by the way, you should go. And unlike all the other memorials, which are kind of like a building or a building around a statue or a statue, they're tight, they're small, they're small geographic areas where you go and you look at this one big centerpiece, and that's really the memorial. The FDR Memorial is spread out and sprawling. It's like a complex of 5 or 6 rooms with many waterfalls and little statues and quotes on the walls. It's beautiful, but it's spread out geographically. And when I was there, it was full of people. I'm like, wow, and it's not because FDR was popular. It's because apparently there were Pokemon there. So it was full of people who were plugged into one phone with a Pokemon Finder app on their other phone, not paying any attention to where they were. And frankly, it kind of disgusted me. Like, I mean, fine, I understand the game. It's fun. It's awesome. But you don't have to do it at a memorial place. And Pokemon Go has caught heat about this before. Like, they put churches and cemeteries and places of solemn places, solemnity, whatever the adjectival form of solemn is. Wait, that is an adjective. You know what I mean? There's certain places that perhaps the developers should have, just removed all the Pokemon from that area, so there wasn't a drive for people to play this fairly disruptive game, because they're pointing and shouting and yelling and talking to each other. Perhaps they should have put a little thought in that. Maybe we should just selectively remove the things that make playing the game attractive from these certain areas where the behavior might be a bit disruptive. So they didn't, and so we end up with what these things are. We see people engaging in this Florging behavior in areas where it's really not appropriate. And there's nothing worse than a Florgy in the wrong place. Anyway, this is Matt Cribbs. I'll see you next week. Keep your Florgies safe, and enjoy. Bye.